intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Natural Freedom League podcast. I am John Rowland, doing business as John Rowland Wydogen, here again, once again, with my producer extraordinaire and co-host, Chill Will Keller.
What's going on, my brother? How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Had a
Awesome.
pretty good day. I'm
Yeah.
being a little lazy. So cold in the mornings.
Yeah, man.
I work
that
evenings.
eclipse is coming in, bringing some deep, heavy energy.
Yeah, what's this about? It's like a longer eclipse than normal, right?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be 7 hours. It's gonna be in Scorpio, I think. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to bring the astrologer on.
Yeah,
But by the time this drops, it would have already happened. So we're
of
gonna be
course.
in the new phase.
Exactly. So maybe
Yep.
after this, we'll go do some rituals tonight.
No doubt.
The topic of today's episode is objective morality is greater than objective reality. This is something that I thought of the other day. In turn, just talking to Will all the time and talking to people about natural law. I kind of come up with these little thoughts, quotes, phrases, axioms. And the way I had actually said it was objective morality is it's more urgent to come to terms with objective morality than it is to come to terms with objective reality. So regardless of what your perspective of reality is, as long as it doesn't violate objective morality, which is do no harm, it is in your right to have that perspective. And I think this really embodies the true idea of freedom of religion. You may have different cultures with different belief systems and different practices, but as long as those practices are not violating your rights, then it is right for them to engage in that reality and have at it. So, Will, before I go into my story, what do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a powerful topic. I will say that our goal as a human being, having this experience to learn and grow and evolve in consciousness, right? This reality is a university, right? It's a schoolyard for us to learn. So understanding objective reality is important, right? Our whole goal is to align our perception with that which is the absolute truth. And objective morality falls right in here. And we'll get into a little deeper on that because I could just rant, but it's an extremely important topic. So almost you have to have an understanding of objective morality to truly understand objective reality, the difference between right action and wrongdoing, wrong behavior. So they kind of go hand in hand. You have to have a good balance, but there is a foundation, the foundational operating system. So we'll dive into this.
Yeah, and another person I saw talking about this was Max Egan, which I'm going to type this into my notes here, talking about the truth movement. And he was talking with Jeff Berwick, and they were saying that it really shouldn't be the truth movement. It should be the freedom movement. And Jeff Berwick was agreeing and saying that that's why he made Anarchapulco, because it was, and he calls himself an anarcho-capitalist because he believes like anarchy is the key, freedom. That's what anarchy means, right?
Mm-hmm.
No rulers, right?
Exactly.
Not no rules. So, they both understand that, and what they were talking about was the truth movement in terms of what you believe as far as being the truth of what the conspiracy is, right? We had an episode a couple back, why do they lie, right? And there's different theories as to what is going on. And the point is that coming to terms with those different theories is less important than coming to terms with objective morality. So,
yeah,
as everyone knows, a lot of our work is based on the work of Mark Passio and the way that he kind of laid out the conspiracy, and he focused on the core issue, and that being of the lack of understanding of natural law, the lack of understanding of karma, spiritual law, that what you do creates your reality. What you give, you get back. The love you take is equal to the love you make, right? It's been said many different ways. And I was deep into Mark Passio. I always get the years mixed up, but I'm going to say at least 2016, 17, 18, going through his work. I started doing Uber around that time, so had a lot of time to listen to the whole podcast series, and really, he was one of those researchers that once you find them, I mean, if he speaks to you, then for me, I like to go through all of their work, and especially the way his is built. It's almost like a class or a school where it's there's steps. So deep into Mark Passio, go to visit a couple of friends that I hadn't seen in a while. And one of my friends, they're both pretty open-minded and somewhat conspiracy-minded, but again, I hadn't seen them in a while. And one of my friends who had given me he had led me to, he gave me the David Icke book, The Truth Shall Set You Free. And that really opened my mind to what was going on. That was a huge step, probably around 2003. Got me to reflect once again on what happened on 9/11. And so he had led me to that. He also had led me to Zecharia Sitchin, the 12th planet, the Anunnaki, the Nibiru, that whole conspiracy, ancient origins. So, he's an open-minded guy. And so I say, have you guys heard of Mark Passio? And they hadn't. So I started breaking it down, right? And I'm really into him at this point. So I'm fired up about it. And, what Mark Passio is talking about, that there is an elite group of, sorcerers, black magicians, dark magicians. We're all magicians, right? We just don't know it. And the dark magicians who know what's going on, who run the world, they use it to manipulate and control us. So the conversation was somewhat getting political, and I pulled it back to, well, it's not political though. Bernie Sanders is no different than Hillary Clinton, is no different than Trump, whatever. And so my buddy started getting kind of irritated with me, and he was saying, well, what about Napoleon? Napoleon, he fought against the Catholic Church and this and that. And I'm like, well, okay, that's there's a lot you can go into there. I mean, what is the true history of Napoleon? And even if there are conflicts amongst these groups, the way that it works is these families pass down, and these wars are made, are kind of set up to, establish certain empires and move the wealth around. But ultimately, if you're going on the theory that Mark Passio propagates, and which is the theory, the conspiracy theory, right? That there's an elite group of people who run the world. They have not, advanced knowledge. They hide it from us, and that's how they control us. So I'm going on that, and he started saying to me, "That's conjecture. That's conjecture." And I'm thinking, well, everything's conjecture, like what's not conjecture in terms of, history or what's going on in the world? I mean, we don't have, it's hard to know the actual facts of what's going on. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, sourcing things. And, he's coming kind of from a perspective of trust what I'm reading, trust this history book for whatever reason, trust the experts, right? And I'm coming from a more inquisitive place. So anyway, so he got kind of irritated, and I was trying to calm it down. And I was saying, we can just agree to disagree. And he didn't want to. And he was like kind of offended that I was getting fired up about it, and I was kind of passionate about it. And so he threw a ad hominem attack at me, and he says, "I'm not a flat earther either, John." And I said, "Well, neither is Mark Passio," because I had known from whatever point I was at in Mark's work, I knew he didn't ascribe to the flat earth theory. And so at that point I was like, and neither am I, right? But it reminded me of, because at that time I was also very involved in the anti-vaccine movement, the health freedom movement, and I would hear it a lot there from people. The people would say, "Oh, you don't believe vaccines work? What are you, a flat earther too?" And that always seemed to me like a social engineering,
triggered response or
like it had been placed into us to say, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I was already looking at the health freedom movement as sort of a dialectic, right? This is being controlled, and they've got people on both sides, and everyone's controlled opposition until no one is. So you assume that some of the people you are following are on a different level, and have agendas too, and you just keep that in mind, right? And so I was already thinking in those terms. And so when I would hear people say that, it just didn't feel authentic to me. It felt like something the Tavistock Institute came up with, and they're like equate anti-vaxxers with the most crazy conspiracy there is, right? That the earth is flat, right? Mm-hmm. And so when my friend said that to me in that way, it inspired me to go look into the flat earth theory. And at that point, the one time someone had asked me about it, I don't remember who it was, my response was, well, how would I really know? Like, is the earth flat, or is the earth a spinning ball? How would I really know? Everything I know is I'm relying on experts. I'm relying on, what I learned from the system that is clearly lying to me, mm-hmm. right? And so again, it was just more of a how would I know? And I will say, I'm going to take a pause here for a minute. I'm proud of myself for having that perspective, because clearly people who hear the flat earth theory, they have much more passionate responses than that. And I think, I'm proud of myself that I try to keep, like you always say, seek truth and speak truth, that you always keep that mentality of a seeker, mm-hmm. and know that you don't know. And always question, always challenge what you're thinking.
Absolutely, man. That's huge. Let me touch on that for a minute too, because I think a huge portion of the issue is in that archetype, the seeker, right? This is also the hermit in the tarot card, right? The person that is constantly seeking knowledge to try to reduce situations down to its causal factors, down to the absolute truth. And there's some things that we're not going to know the totality of, or get great distance on, So I don't know is an answer, and a good answer at times, right? But true open-mindedness is having a willingness to change. That is where it gets tricky. People kind of pitch their tent halfway up the mountain and think they have an understanding, right? Because whatever information you take in, it becomes a part of you, becomes a part of your operating system, your psyche. You might hold beliefs, and everything gets filtered through that you take in from there on. So, you might have to reevaluate yourself. And this is where like the shadow work, the deep introspection comes in. And that can be hard for a lot of people. So it's good to stay in that archetype of the seeker, constantly seeking truth. You're on mute.
Thank you.
Jaman.
Yeah. And it's funny, Zoom tells you too.
Oh, does it really?
It like pops up a note, like it sees you like making noise or whatever. But I wanted to interject this here that so finally I end up researching, like really looking into the flat earth theory, and I discovered Eric Dubay, which from what I can tell, he kind of has the best work on the flat earth theory, the most comprehensive. There are others, Santos Bonacci, but at that time, Eric Dubay, like he kind of stood out. I'm glad I found him personally, because I felt like he tried to explain it in a calm way and show, the issues with, with the different things that we're told. And the most powerful thing about the flat earth theory to me is understanding that it's a completely different model. Because what I think happens is people tend to use the globe earth axioms and perspective and paradigm to debunk the flat earth. And I think that that's where a lot of confusion lies. So for example, when I told my sister about it, my sister said, I know the earth's not flat because I can fly around the globe. I can fly around the planet. I've been on an airplane. And nothing in the flat earth theory, in the flat earth theory, you can fly around the planet, so, and then even when I've looked into the more extensive debunkings of it, first of all, I haven't personally felt like I heard a really good debunking of it. But once you look at it from that model, for me, this is my experience, when I looked at it from that model, a lot of things made more sense to me. So one of the main things that stood out to me was the moon, and the fact that you only see one side of the moon all the time, even though it's supposed to be rotating. And they say that that's because it rotates at the perfect rate that you always see the same side. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The other thing that popped up for me at that time was in astronomy class, and maybe I'm an idiot, but in my astronomy class in junior college, I remember not being able to understand the phases of the moon and how that made sense. And so anyway, this episode is not about flat earth theory versus globe earth theory, but we're using it as an example. because the ad hominem attacks that I've seen on both sides shows me that there is an aspect about this that is a psyop. But and I don't consider myself a flat earther. I don't like that term because I don't think flat earthers have all the answers. But they are posing questions that I haven't seen really good answers for. And as we said before, Mark Passio, everybody knows, we follow his work. We're a part of the One Great Work Network. When I was into Mark's work at that time, what I understood from Mark was that he was kind of getting almost harassed by the flat earth community to kind of accept their perspective and start preaching it. And he kind of lashed out at them on like a couple of episodes, that of his podcast that I saw. But for me, from where I was sitting, I was like, I'm kind of surprised he doesn't think that there's something to this, right? And I guess ultimately this episode is saying that we do agree with Mark in that the objective morality is the more important thing to talk about. But we need to have room for each other to question these things. And we need to have that to be an open dialogue on some level. It needs to be okay to talk about it. And, I think part of me, telling this story is I just want to be honest about it. I still have questions. And I do watch the the globe earth side, and a lot of stuff doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think either side explains everything perfectly. And with the ad hominem attacks, it feels like being attacked by a pro-vaxxer. A lot of it is like, it's like, you're an idiot and like you don't understand science, or even just being called a conspiracy theorist, right? Mm-hmm. It's like anti-vaxxer flat earther is like, that's a synonym for conspiracy theorist. And so when you see people in what was considered somewhat the truth movement, sort of, ad hominem attacking a theory like this, I think that's part of the psyop, unfortunately, is that both sides are claiming they have the ultimate knowledge on this, and then they're attacking each other. So in that sense, the psyop is working.
Yeah, absolutely. And, both camps can definitely meet in the middle, under certain conditions like morality. And that's what we really need to focus on. Some of these topics, we might not get the answers right now. When I dove into the flat earth information, which is, there's not even a legit model. It's a working model. But a lot of the flat earth people, they're claiming that they don't have all the answers. And that's kind of the problem, is because government institutions, they kind of have a monopoly on certain things, right? I mean, I think even the globe earth model people could agree that NASA's full of shit and all that information, is just malarkey. But so there's this middle ground, given the current state of the world, the human condition, which is that human beings do not understand objective morality. Thus, their actions are immoral, and this is creating a prison planet. So that's the middle ground, is that we can focus on objective morality. And then, these conversations are great to have, and dive deeper into and seek more. But a certain level of consciousness much needs to be achieved to maybe progress in that conversation. A lot of conversations that I've had on both sides, People they are emotionally reactive. And when you're going to truly take in information, you really have to set aside a lot of your perceived notions and what you think it might be. So, when I dove into the flat earth information, I completely set aside what I thought my belief, what I thought it was, right? What I've quote unquote learned, and came at it at a true open-minded state. And it is compelling. There's a lot of things that are compelling. I don't claim to be a flat earther. I do remain in a neutral category. I do have questions, but ultimately, I try to reduce everything down to the absolute truth, which is natural law. Immutable, binding, not changing, and go from there.
Right. Ultimately, natural law is the more urgent theory and understanding that needs to be taught because of the natural law of freedom. We do agree that the more moral a society is, the more freedom a society has. That's a way you can tell that your society is on the right path, is that the freedom that you have. And your perspective on the physical reality is less important than your understanding of objective morality and how to treat one another. So just like I dove in deep to Mark Passio's work, I recently discovered the work of James True, and I have been diving into his work. And I think that a lot of his work overlaps very much with Mark's work. But I think that James True gets, pretty deep philosophically. And this can happen when we're out talking to people. You're going to get questions about certain situations and nuanced situations about, what is right and what is wrong, and, within each, interaction. And so he had an episode just yesterday, and his episode was called Pop-Tarts and Chemtrails. And so we had these two stories. And so the basic idea was, how do you judge a moral or an immoral act when there are so many circumstances in people's lives that can affect the way that those choices may have been perceived? So for example, he talked about a guy who had been, working out and, had been buying lots of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and was doing well for himself, feeling good about himself. And what James True would say is that he had a lot of prana built up, right? James True talks about this prana economy, which you could kind of see as being like a way to visualize how natural law works, right? That we're exchanging energy. And so it's a really interesting concept that he has. And so, but he's talking about this guy's built up this prana, but the one thing that he has that is, his weakness and his addiction is Pop-Tarts, right? So, he's kind of like saying, like, is that immoral for him to eat a Pop-Tart, right? And then he fast forwards to the guy gets over, his addiction, he's going to stop. And so he goes, takes these boxes of Pop-Tarts, he's going to go get rid of them. And he sees a homeless guy standing on the corner and he's like, oh, I'll give him the Pop-Tarts. That's even better, right? And then James True is posing the question, is that a moral or immoral act? And he goes through the chat, and one of the people in the chat said it's neither. And that's the answer that I was thinking also, is that has nothing really to do with morality ultimately, because there's really no harm being done in any of those situations. I mean, I guess you could argue by eating the Pop-Tarts, you're harming yourself. And ultimately that is probably a lesson that we have to learn. but that where we're at right now in society, and when we talk about objective morality, we're talking about, not abusing that poor guy, anymore, but interesting concept. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's good to dive in like what is morality, right? We're saying objective morality, meaning there is an absolute definitive difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. And the common denominator is harm. A right action or a right behavior, like natural rights, you have the right to do it, is any action that does not cause harm to another sentient being, right? So that's the key, is harm. So harming yourself, right? This doesn't get into morality. This is more like individual ethics. You can have vices. This is part of your own individual spiritual journey, right? Um, but as soon as there's two or more people in the room, and there's an action, then you enter into the realm of morality. It's immoral if there's harm, if one of them has initiated harm against another person. And this doesn't change. It can be two people or it can be 1,000,000 people. That's the best way to do it, is reduce the situation to find out if it's moral or immoral, and just you and another person on an island. One person hates bananas and says you can't have bananas, and I'm gonna hurt you if you eat bananas because I hate bananas, right? That's an immoral act. You can't do that. So, and this doesn't change. You can't write it on a piece of paper. You can't call it the Constitution. You can't do anything that human beings created. This is how it is in the natural world. It's inherent, put there by the Creator that has put all the other laws of nature in effect. The physical laws, the spiritual, metaphysical laws. Also known as the Hermetic principles, and so you can break natural law with yourself by eating the wrong type of food, eating processed shit. You're gonna be breaking the laws of nature, and your body will fall apart. This is what we're talking about. It's every action has a reaction. Every cause has an effect. So
Yeah.
And this is such a simple topic, such a simple topic. Almost, if you explain it very simply to someone, that most people would agree with that. But as soon as you start applying it to what's going on in the world today, that's where they have a problem with objective reality, right? So this is why the foundation, your principle, right? Principle, first things first, your operating system, all the information that you're taking in on a daily basis needs to be filtered through your principles. And those principles must be the knowledge and understanding of objective morality. This is how we create positive, right action in the world and change.
Right. Yeah. And in James True's episodes, his last two episodes, he's sort of pitting his discussion, his perspective against Mark Passio's most recent documentary that just came out, The Science of Natural Law, and which is all about objective morality. And so James True poses another story. So the title was Pop Tarts and Chemtrails. So the other story is that imagine that he basically, it's kind of the same thing I said before about if you were George W. Bush, would you have done anything different? And James True is talking about having compassion for the people that are doing us harm, and that that's a level that we have to get to. And he keeps saying compassion doesn't mean consent, right? But he's like trying to say that we have to have that compassion in order to really solve the problem and move past this and grow from this. And I tend to agree with him, on a certain level. So in his idea is that there is this elite group, right, that we think are like, Luciferian, Satanists, pedophiles, that they're actually trying to get us to wake up. There's some kind of hidden hand going on that's actually trying to wake us up. And that's why things are so obvious, like Building 7, right? That like they're putting all this stuff out there so much to wake us up, to get us to look up and realize how immoral we're being, right? So then he's kind of posing the question again. So then he's saying that this one guy comes up with the idea, oh, hey, I know how we can get them to wake up. Let's start spray painting the sky, right? Start spraying, make them think we're spraying chemicals on them, right? And this will get them to wake up, right? And that is with chemtrails, that's one of those conspiracies that it's so frustrating when you're talking to people, because it seems so obvious. Like, don't you see that there's, that's not natural, like there, something's going on. So anyway, so then he's arguing, like, in a situation like that, is that immoral or moral, right? Well, ultimately that is immoral, but what James True is trying to say that is, it's not necessarily evil the way that we think of evil, that it is this necessary part of the way things work, that we have to go through these crashes and downfalls of society in order to grow and develop out of that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's getting out there. But I totally disagree with that. I understand what he's saying. But again, as soon as you enter in the realm of harm, right, it's immoral. And that takes it to a bad place. Whether he thinks it might be trying to escalate people's awareness and waking up, that's besides the point. He doesn't have the right he has the right to think that, but that's not the case. That's not going to make it in a moral or even a constructive topic. So yeah, that's a tough one. That it almost feels like kind of the opposite polarity. If everything's doom and gloom on one side, he's kind of on the opposite polarity where maybe they're doing this to help us, which doesn't make sense, because it's not help, it's violence, because people's rights are being violated and being harmed, being murdered, being killed. Like, we know this stuff is happening. Even chemtrails, right? We know that they're spraying barium and light metals. We can test the soil. We can do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it takes it into a bad realm. To me, evil is ignorance. That's evil, because these people are also telling the majority of people what they're doing. But because there's lack of knowledge, the majority of people it's a tacit agreement, right? They're not saying no, and they're not standing up for themselves, because they are ignorant to knowledge, to truth, to objective morality. So therefore, the social engineers are influencing society, and then the people are actually taking the immoral action and condoning the behavior.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting right now, because it's, one thing about the flat earth theory for me is that it opened my mind to this bigger idea of, like, they literally have lied about everything. Right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's like, it just takes you to a different level. There's different things that come up after that, like, for example, the dinosaurs aren't real, right? That, you know, they're actually hiding, you know, they're hiding that there were giants that lived here. Like, these are the bones that they're finding. They're hiding that. Um, Nuclear weapons are not real. You know, that they basically are lying to us to make us think they're so much more powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what NASA is. NASA is just takes all of our money and just spends it on these elaborate hoaxes, basically.
And then loses the technology. Well, we had that technology then. We don't have it now.
Yeah.
Right? Ancient civilizations, they're just primitive people. We know that's completely false. These people were extremely aware, advanced in consciousness and in other technologies. So,
Right. But it does make you feel, at least for the people who are waking up and who are aware, that it's so blatantly obvious that either they are trying to let us know, and that there's a truth to this idea that with their spells that they are casting, they have to absolve themselves of some of the karmic debt by letting us know and making it obvious what's going on. But it is interesting to think that is that hidden hand of natural law that's sort of, you know, showing us, you know, making it obvious for us to find a solution, which is to stop participating and stop paying attention to all their nonsense, right?
yeah.
And so, you know, it's, in some ways, whenever I see people talking about that, like a lot of religious people, like when they see the 666, they automatically think it's like God telling them that this is bad, right? Which is good that they at least have that awareness to make that connection, right? Like, that's important that they have that. But for me, you have to think, on the other hand, that they're putting that out there on purpose to either mock us or to tell us that they're doing it, right? But it is interesting to think that maybe there is some, well, we know there is this invisible hand of natural law that works, you know, and it works with us, right? So when these negative things, evil things are happening, then natural law is showing us a different way and opening doors for us and helping us to create and build and helping us to be able to take that step forward and step into those actions that we do need to accomplish and make sure that we are fulfilling our responsibilities that are attached with our rights. You know, with those rights comes the responsibility to protect those rights. There's a responsibility to know those rights and to protect them. And so that's why, shout out to Mark Passio. He has put it in such a way, such a concise way that simplifies it. There is going to still be room for debate. It won't be 100% perfect. There's a lot of nuanced questions, and there's probably a learning curve where we're going to get there. You know, issues like abortion, issues like veganism. Obviously, we can say abortion is wrong. However, does that mean that you have the right to force a woman to not have an abortion through government? Well, we don't believe in government. So, you know, we have a little axiom for that, which is you can't legislate morality. It has to be through education. It has to be through propagating this message of objective morality. That has to be the most important thing. That has to be the primary, first principle.
Yeah, well said. through the knowledge of objective morality, we can gain a better perception of objective reality. If truth, that which is the absolute truth, is a straight line, your frequency, how frequent are you hitting that line of truth? So raising our frequency, meaning we're more in alignment with truth, that which is, that which has manifested, right? Natural law is the absolute truth. It's in the past, it's here, it'll be in the future. The more our behavior aligns with that, then we're in alignment with truth or in harmony with nature. So, and this is the thing too, right? Like the social engineers, they're more like influencers, right? They tell us what they're going to do because they know how the human psyche works. They know how natural law works. They're trying to build the perfect control system. It's blasphemy to the creator, to natural law, right? So they have to put that out there, and then we have to do the action so they can, because they know how natural law works, so they can lower the karmic debt upon themselves. So the human being consciousness is it's a phenomenal thing. They know that the more patterns happen, we're gonna catch on, right? You can only put your hands on the hot stove so many times before you start to realize, it starts to come to you like, hey, I'm burning my fucking hand, right? They know this is going to happen. So this is why we're in the situation where we're at now, where there's just tons of misdirections and psyops and a whole bunch of bullshit, is because in the aggregate, human awareness is starting to raise. The patterns starting to be, we're starting to recognize the patterns. So that's, like you said, it's education of objective morality. This is higher consciousness. If consciousness is pattern recognition, right? Recognizing the patterns in the environment, in reality, and within ourselves, right? That's one and the same. How do we get to higher consciousness? How do we get to recognizing more patterns? We have to take in more information. What information? Has to be the information of natural law, of how reality works, which is also how we work. The body, the mind, the psyche, right? And objective morality, how you operate in this world, is the foundation, right? So you know what is a wrongdoing, wrong action, and what is your right. And this is, this is principles. This is what we need to understand. And so, yeah. So, and they know this, so they're going to continue to throw bullshit at us. A lot of people are saying there's a great awakening right now. I disagree with that. There's definitely not a great awakening. A great awakening would be more people understanding objective morality. There is, the great awareness. More people are starting to recognize the patterns. Government's full of shit. The media is full of shit, right? But that's only a certain level of awareness. They're still missing the piece of the puzzle, which is objective morality, natural law. So true education, to lead one out of the darkness of ignorance to the light of understanding.
Yeah, and speaking on that, there was just a big podcast on Tim Pool's podcast, and he had on Luke Rudkowski with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and what's that guy's, Michael Malice, who is a professed anarchist. So you had at least two anarchists in the room, and they did not the best job of propagating anarchy and getting the work out. And Joe Rogan calls it a cult, but he's talking about the left-wing cult. It's a left-wing cult. He's still in that dialectic. Alex Jones wasn't in the beginning in a political dialectic, but now kind of seems to be, at least with Trump, he was. So that shows you that, like, again, I mean, at least, I mean, that's alternative media, kind of. You have to wonder why a lot of the people that they don't have on. But yeah, it goes along with what you're saying, that the unveiling is happening, and there are more people who are seeing it, but
which is why they're going to throw more bullshit at us, right? We're in a new age. There's, the energies are coming in as well. We're constantly communicating with nature. Nature has an ebb and flow. This same thing with consciousness, and so people are already naturally heightened, right? So they need to mix in all the misdirection and all the bullshit to keep us distracted from the truth, the objective absolute truth of shit.
well, it definitely appears as though they're scrambling, because I mean, this Bill Gates thing and smallpox, that's a little much. I mean, if that's all those people who say, "Oh, Bill Gates, he's a good guy, he's trying to help the world." I mean, why does he know about a smallpox attack, and why is he the one announcing it? I mean, that in itself is just so blatantly incorrect. It should not be happening. It should not be the world that we live in, or that we're okay with. I mean, even seeing Fauci still out there talking with all the evidence that people have about him lying, and it just, I mean, clearly through that system, through Babylon, there's no solution. There's no justice. I did a post today. There's no justice through this system. You think that everyone's talking about this court case in Rittenhouse in Wisconsin, and everyone's all hyped up on it. Everyone's right back on the teat, of the boob tube, and talking about justice. There's no justice in that case. This thing is all scripted to drive us into different reactions, and again, it's the controlled demolition of the economy, of the society. This is what's supposed to be happening. I mean, everyone come to terms with that. Government's working exactly like it's supposed to.
It's the same playbook they've been using for thousands of years: problem, reaction, solution, and we are seeing that even today on a global scale, right? Everyone thinks it's the collapse of the empire, which yes, it is, but they're still gonna that's the reaction, and now they're gonna come out with the new solution. It'll be the new system, but people's lack of knowledge and understanding of objective morality, they'll just follow right in line in the new system. They can say government completely collapsed, and then now here's a new group of quote unquote leaders, right? And people will follow those leaders. That's the problem, right? We don't need leading. We need to save ourselves, lead ourselves individually. And from the individual, you get the collective. So, and understanding rights, natural law, objective morality, that's where it is. So we know that the system is bullshit. Detach from that. Let it go.
Yeah, and I think we can tie it all in and wrap this up by saying that, again, we have to allow people to have their perspective on reality. If they think this product that is being forced on everybody is great and they want to give it to their children, there's nothing we can do to stop them. There really isn't. Under natural law, there isn't anything we can do to stop them. I mean, would you be justified to go, physically stop people from doing it? I mean, you're probably not going to get very far. One, you're not probably going to accomplish very much. And, honestly, they want that. They're probably going to promote some type of event like that, as a false flag. I mean, they're talking about it. They're talking about the health freedom movement as being terrorists. And so, but again, when we are talking to people, the message should be, I don't care what your belief is about the science. I don't care what your belief is about how great this thing is, or whether it works or whether it doesn't. What it comes down to, you don't have a right to violate me. You don't have a right to coerce me. And I don't have a right to do it to you. I'm not asking you to do anything. Don't ask me to do anything. And obviously, they have a machine behind them that is going to try to coerce us by trying to, eject us out of society or kick us out of society. And we have to be able to say, well, we don't need to be a part of your system. We can have our own system. We can build our own system. And, that's the solution. And returning to nature, understanding your rights and understanding the responsibilities that come with those rights. Those are the main things. That's what Natural Freedom League is all about. That's what we started out doing, was going out into the public and talking about this idea. And again, we get into these discussions about, oh, so you believe in this and you believe in this theory. And, when the Q thing was really hot and heavy, everyone thought we were Q. And, it doesn't matter. You got to bring it back. All we're talking about is your natural law rights and how you understand them and how you protect them. And that's where we move forward from.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, the conversation starts and stops right there at morality, right? It doesn't matter the science, what news said what, which needle craft to take, which one's better, blah, blah, blah. It stops right at, do they have a right to do that, to coerce you, to violate you, your own body, right? So, and then no, they don't have that right. Conversation ends there. That's the foundation. That's the straight principle. That is the causal factor. So that's why, we focus on rights and morality, and that's the foundation. That's what people need to ask within themselves. Even anyone watching this video, ask yourself, look in the mirror. Do you understand what morality is? Do you truly understand what rights are? Or are you just going off of what you think you know? So you gotta really dive in and introspect and ask yourself these questions: what you believe, why you believe them. So
that's right. What is a right, and where do our rights come from?
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up there. That was a good talk, Will.
Yeah, good chat, man. Right on.
All right. And always remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace.
Chill.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the